Welcome, students and teachers. We are so excited to have you all with us today as we explore a little bit more in honor of Black History Month. And we are excited to have many people join us from clear across the state of Illinois. I want to give a special thanks to our co-sponsors, the Springfield and Central Illinois African American History Museum that is located here in Springfield, Illinois. We are so thankful also for others who have contributed and helped with us, including Dr. Ann Joseph for her assistance and consulting with the museum. And I am actually extremely excited to welcome Kathryn Harris. She is a retired librarian and researcher. Many of you may know her because she's done some reenacting of Harriet Tubman, and we're excited to have her with us today. And I know that all of you have been looking forward to meeting her, hearing her stories, to learn more, to know about more than Martin and Rosa. Without much more, I'm going to turn it over to Kathryn Harris, and let's see what she has to share with us today.
Good morning. My name is Kathryn Harris, and I am a retired librarian. I was formerly the Library Services Director at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library here in Springfield, Illinois. I'm very delighted to be with all of you today, and I want to say a special thank you to my friends at the Illinois State Museum for this opportunity. Now, today we're going to learn about some more about Black history. And as my title of my piece is called, There's More to Black History Than Martin and Rosa. Everyone knows about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, but there are so many other people in Black history that you should know about. In fact, I have people on my shirt, if you can see it, that you probably should know about as well. I'm going to leave that as a test for you to figure out who these women are, because they kind of look different when they're upside down to me. So I have brought with me today a poster that's called the ABCs of Black History. And it has 24 other names that you should know from A to Z, starting with Audre Lorde, who was a writer. I'm not going to go through each and every row, but I'll go through at least one person on each row. How's that? So I said Audre Lorde on the first row. Then we have Harriet Tubman, my all-time favorite person in African American history. Everybody should know who Harriet Tubman is. Harriet Tubman was a conductor on the Underground Railroad. She was a very brave woman. Not only was she a conductor on the railroad, but during the Civil War, she served as a scout and a spy and a nurse in the Union Army. And she was a very good leader, an excellent leader, not only during the war and on the railroad, but later on in life as well. She worked for the right to vote for colored men after the war. That was one of the things that she did. Another person that I'll talk about that you might not know a lot about is John Lewis. John Lewis, he passed away not too very long ago, last year. John Lewis was a representative from Georgia. He has been in the news or a newsworthy figure almost ever since he was a very young man. You may have seen a very bad incident that happened on a bridge called the Edmund Pettus Bridge, where John Lewis was attacked and beaten because he wanted to march for the right to vote and for civil rights. But he was beaten and badly hurt. So he has a very famous quote that I like, and the ending words of it are, make good trouble. He did make good trouble. He made good trouble fighting for civil rights and equality for everyone. Everyone has certainly heard of Oprah Winfrey. Oprah has an Illinois connection because her studio was in Chicago. We all know that she got to be very famous for being on the radio, and then she had a talk show, and people came from all over the country to Chicago, to Harpo Studios in Chicago. And if you rearrange the letters in Oprah's name, you'll get the word Harpo. And that is where her studio is, or was. I think she moved it all the way out to California. Maybe she got tired of the snow in Chicago. I wouldn't blame her if she did, because I get tired of the snow in Springfield. Another person that you may not know too much about is Mae Jemison. How many of you are into STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and especially you young ladies who are listening today? Because Mae Jemison was really a STEM woman. She was the first African-American woman to go into space. And she was really, really smart. And she loved math and engineering. And those skills are what helped her to become the first African-American astronaut. So that'll give you something to look forward to. And maybe it's something that you can aspire to be as a young Black girl, because I believe in Black girl magic. Moving some more on there, and then another Illinois connection, President Barack Obama. He was not born in Illinois. He was born in the United States of America in Hawaii. However, he moved at a young age to Kansas, if I'm not mistaken. And then when he got to be an adult, he moved to Chicago, and he was a community organizer. And that's where he met his very beautiful wife, Michelle, who thought he had very big ears, I'm told. But they fell in love, and they worked together, and they got married. They have 2 wonderful daughters. And the best part is that he was the very first African-American president in the United States of America. And my dream is that one day we might have a woman for president. That will really be good. So if you go to Chicago, you can see places and things that have been erected, so to speak, signs that honor President Obama. And in the coming years, he will have a presidential library in Jackson Park in Chicago. And one of these days, if it gets built, because I'm a librarian, I would love to go and volunteer and work there for a couple of days a week or a couple of days a month or something like that. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity coming down the road. One of the other people who is on my lovely ABCs of Black History poster is the Queen of Words. And Maya Angelou, she was really indeed the Queen of Words. She knew how to tell a story, and she wrote very, very well. And I think probably her most famous book Might be. I know why the cage bird sings. And so she was very good at that. Then, of course, we have Rosa Parks. She's the aura in my alphabet. Rosa refused to get up. She sat down so we could sit down too. Rosa lived in Montgomery. She was Alabama. She was a dear friend of Dr. Martin Luther King. And they decided that because Black people had to ride in the back of the bus in the South, that they were going to have a strike. So they did make a strike against the city buses for 300 and was more than a year, 360 plus days. They refused to ride the bus. Now, that's caused the bus company to lose money. And when you lose money in your business, it might make you want to think about some of the rules that you have. And over time, Dr. King, Rosa Parks, and lots of other people who participated in the boycott were successful in causing the Montgomery Bus Company to close, but to change their rules. One of the things that the Black citizens of Montgomery did, however, to help the people get to work, they started like a car service, or they ran taxis to get people from one place to another because they were not to ride the bus. You either walked or you got a ride with someone. Another one of my favorite people is Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall was a judge, a justice, and he served on the Supreme Court of the United States. He was the first to serve on the court. He was followed by Justice Thomas is now on the court. And I look forward to what our current president, Joe Biden, is saying about appointing a Black woman to the United States Supreme Court. We will see how that might happen, of course. On the last row there, I have young Ruby Bridges. How many of you know about Ruby Bridges? Probably not very many of you, because she made African American history when she was only 6 years old. She went to, very brave young lady. Her parents wanted her to go to the school that was down the street from her in New Orleans, rather than to ride a bus and have to go, several blocks away. So her parents decided that she was going to go to the school that was right down the street, except that the school that was right down the street from their home did not want Black people to go there. But she was determined, and so were her parents, that she was going to go there. So with the help of an organization called NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, which is a civil rights organization that has been around since 1909. They worked with that organization and that group, and she did go to that school. It might sound kind of funny, and I do have to chuckle about it, but she was the only person in her class because the white children refused to go to school. So she had the teacher all to herself. And there is a very famous painting by an American artist whose name is Norman Rockwell. And it features Ruby Bridges being escorted to school by the federal marshals. That probably wasn't very comfortable or very much fun, but it did keep her safe. And guess what? The rules for going to school in New Orleans changed because of what a 6-year-old did. You'd be surprised. Who knows, if you're 6, maybe you might do something to change history, because you don't always have to be an adult to make a change, And speaking of change, I have a book that I would like to read. And it's about change. And I'm going to pull it out of my bag here. And it is called Change Sings. It's by a woman whose name is Amanda Gorman. Now, you may have heard of Amanda Gorman because Amanda was the youngest speaker to be at an inaugural ceremony for the president. And she was there and recited a poem that is very beautiful. And I do not know it by heart, but you can go to the public library or you can Google it, Amanda Gorman, and the poem that she recited at the inauguration of the president. But this one is called Change Sings, and it is very beautiful, a children's anthem. I can hear change humming in its loudest, proudest song. I don't fear change coming, and so I sing along. I scream with the skies of red and blue streamers. I dream with the cries of tried and true dreamers. And we know who that tried and true dreamer is. That would be Dr. Martin Luther King. He surely was a dreamer. I'm a chant that rises and rings. There is hope where my change sings. I think they're kind of having a task here that they're going to be doing something to make a change in their neighborhood. Though some don't understand it, those windmills of mystery, I sing with all the planet and its hills of histories. Looks to me like they might be trying to clean up the park in their neighborhood. I hum with 100 hearts, each of us lifting a hand. I use my strength and my smarts. Take a knee to make a stand. Take a knee to make a stand. I'm bright as the light each day brings. There is love where my change sings. They're going to visit an older lady in the neighborhood. She has a walker. They're going to help her. I show others tolerance, though it might take some courage. I don't make a taller fence, but fight a better bridge. And there's a young man there in a wheelchair, and they're making a ramp at his house so he can come outside and be with the other kids. I talk not only of distances from where and how we came, big map of the United States. Did you ever play hopscotch? I did. I wasn't good at playing basketball, though. I also walk our differences to show we are the same. I'm a movement that roars and springs. There's a wave where my change sings. So all of those folks that she saw around the way in her neighborhood, looks like they're having a parade, having a good time. Change sings where? They inside of me, because I am the change that I want to see. And that's what we should all be. As I grow, it grows like seeds. I am just what the world needs. Because if we want to change, the change has to start with us. I'm the voice where freedom rings. You're the love your bright heart brings. We are the wave starting to spring, for we are the change that we sing. We're what the world is becoming, and we know it won't be long. We all hear strumming. Won't you sing along and be the change that you want to see? I do have two other things behind me that I want to talk to you about today. And they're two dolls. I love dolls. I have a Harriet Tubman doll over here and a little book of my. And finally, on the other side, I have a book about the Fierce 44, 44 people who changed the world, and my doll of Ida B. Wells. So I thank you for listening today. Thank you.
Kathryn, we have a question
Oh,
from a student.
very good.
Did you ever meet or see Dr. Martin Luther King?
Wow. No, I never did get to see him in person, but I did go to Washington, D.C., and I went to the Lincoln Memorial where he gave his I Have a Dream speech. And on the very step where he stood to make that speech, I stood in that very place. And that particular step has a marker that says the I Have a Dream speech in August of 1963. It's right there. And if you go to the Lincoln Memorial, you can see it too. Do I have other questions?
Have you ever seen Harriet Tubman from a student?
Well, I have never seen Harriet Tubman because Harriet Tubman passed away March 10th, 1913. But the National Park Service has a park in her honor. It's in Dorchester County, Maryland, and it's near the Chesapeake Bay. And it is a wonderful place. I visited there before, and it is so very moving. And I have a picture that I took there, standing by a statue of Harriet Tubman. It's one of my favorite possessions. Oh my. All right.
Have you ever seen Rosa Parks?
No, Rosa Parks lives in Detroit. She did move from Montgomery as she got older, and she moved to Detroit. But no, I've never met her, but I have seen her, of course, just like many of you have, on TV programs.
Great. Have you ever met anyone that's on your poster?
Who have I met? Well, I did meet John Lewis. That's who I met because he was here in Springfield at an event that was out at the University of Illinois at Springfield. But he came here to, when he was talking about the graphic novels that he wrote. And there's three volumes, and it's called March, M-A-R-C-H. And maybe if you go to your local public library, you could see if they have it. But they tell his life story and all of the things that he did from his childhood to when he got to be elected to Congress. One of the funny things that's in the book that always made me chuckle is when he was learning, when he wanted to become a teacher and a preacher, his audience were the chickens that were on his family farm. I thought, and he would talk to them as if they were his parishioners or the children in his Sunday school class. I always thought that was a funny part of John Lewis's story. Do I have other questions?
Yes. How does it feel to be a Harriet Tubman impersonator?
Oh my goodness. It is wonderful to be a Harriet Tubman presenter. That's what I call it, a first person presentation. It's really fun. You have to really read a lot of books, a lot of websites. You can go out on the internet and find material, but you have to really know the story, because when I present as Harriet Tubman, at the end, I always ask if anyone has any questions, because I have a program that I present. But then I say, does anyone have any questions? And there are always questions, and you never know what someone is going to ask you. So you have to be as prepared as you can be. And preparation is what leads to success. So I think I'm a successful presenter for Harriet Tubman.
You do a great job.
Thank you.
And with that in mind, because you talked about so much doing research, one of the students asked, do you have any questions about history that you want to know more about?
Do I have questions about history? Wow. Actually, not really, because I'm a librarian. If I have questions, I just go look it up. I go to the library or I go to Google, and sometimes I read the Wikipedia entry, but sometimes you might have to get a little bit more information than you can get from the Wikipedia, because there are lots of other places to get information other than the Wikipedia. And, sometimes people say that books are going to go bye-bye and we aren't going to have them. I kind of laugh at that, because books have been around since time immemorial. And I think they're going to be here long after all of us and all of you are long gone. I think we'll always have books. Books, one of the people who was on my chart, the ABCs of Black History, that I talked about, that I didn't talk about, was Frederick Douglass. Now, what does Frederick Douglass have to do with reading? Frederick Douglass was an enslaved person. He was a slave. And for some reason, his master's wife taught him how to read. She did not know that you were not supposed to teach slaves how to read, because you yourself know that when you read, you can go anywhere in the world, and it teaches you, you learn so many different things. So they did not want the slaves to learn how to read, because they might try to figure out how to run away, how to change things that just were not right in their eyes. And so reading could be hazardous, at least to the white people, not to the Black people. But reading is very important. And not only did Frederick Douglass learn how to read, he also learned how to write. And then he learned how to be one of the best orators. That's a person who makes speeches in the 19th century. And one other thing about Frederick Douglass that I learned from reading about him was that he was the most photographed person in the 19th century. I thought that was pretty cool. And photography really only started in the 19th century, but he was the most photographed person in all of the 19th century. He lived up into the 20th century, but he even had more photographs taken than President Lincoln. Do you have other questions, Lorna?
Yes, we do. There's a couple related to Martin Luther King Jr. If you were ever to meet Martin Luther King Jr., what would you say to him?
Oh, wow. That is a hard question. That is a good question. I would say, Dr. King, I am honored and humbled to meet you. I thank you for everything that you did to make our country a better place, to help make our country a better place. I would be very sad, though, because he was assassinated, and that kind of stopped him. It did not, however. You can kill the dreamer, but you cannot kill the dream. And Dr. King's dream still lives on. And perhaps one day we might achieve one of the things that he talked about. We're making some progress, because one of the things that Dr. King said in his speech was that he wanted people to be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. That means didn't care what color you are, red, white, blue, green, purple, yellow, whatever. What was important was what kind of person you are inside and what kind of person you are as you interact with others. And that, I think, is something that we should all try to achieve, even today. Dr. King said that in 1968, and here we are. I can't do the math that fast, but it's many years forward, and we still have not achieved that dream, nor have we achieved what Dr. King hoped for and what President Obama and many others hoped for, and Mr. Lincoln, that all men are created equal, all men. And so we still have work to do on that bit of American history. But you know what? African-American history, Black history, it's all American history, because we're all Americans. Other questions?
Thank you. With that wonderful sharing, and thank you, Kathryn, a student asks, have you ever been part of marches or boycotts?
Yes, I was a part of a march here in Springfield. We had a march, and we had a car caravan around the time that George Floyd was murdered. And I participated in that. Yeah, that caravan of cars, it was amazing. I think there were probably hundreds of cars that day. But that was that was the only activity that I've participated in like that. I wanted to when I was in college in Carbondale. They had a civil rights rally in Cairo, which is further south. Well, I wanted to go to it, but my mother said I couldn't. But she let my brother go. And my brother's only 4 years older than me. He said, Mama, I'll take care of her. She wants to go. No, she's not going. So I didn't get to go.
Thank you so much, Kathryn. We appreciate it. We've got quite a few. I'm not sure we'll get through all of them, but we'll try and get through some of them. And what we can't answer online, we will send your teachers the emails with your answers. So have you ever visited a house from the Underground Railroad?
Have I ever visited a house on the Underground Railroad? Well, yes. I have visited a couple of houses that were stations on the Underground Railroad. One of them that I visited was It's not a house. It's a big church. It's called Mother Bethel Church in Philadelphia. And it was a known station on the Underground Railroad. And the church is magnificent, and they speak very proudly. When you go there and talk to the guides, they talk about the church's role as in hiding fugitives under the floorboards of the church for the Underground Railroad. And then there's a house not too far from Springfield in Jacksonville. It's called Woodlawn Farm, and it's not too very far away from here. And I have visited there, and it too was a station on the Underground Railroad. And then many of the buildings that are on the campus of Illinois College, those buildings were also stations on the Underground Railroad. The founders of Illinois College were ministers who were from Vermont. And Vermont was an anti-slavery abolitionist state. And they came and settled here in Illinois and started a college. And they were very anti-slavery. Anti-slavery folks were on the faculty there. Other questions?
Yes. So some students are curious about the wrap on your head.
Well, I'm going to start over. It is representative of Kente Cloth, which is a fabric that is very prominent and very popular in Africa, particularly in Ghana, which is on the western side of Africa. I had the honor and privilege of traveling to South Africa, all the way down to the bottom, which is where Nelson Mandela was from. And I went to the home of a friend that I met there for dinner, and her curtains were of Kente cloth. And they were so very beautiful. When I was in South Africa, I went to Cape Town and Johannesburg and Durban, but I also went to Robben Island, where Nelson Mandela was imprisoned. And I stood in the cell where he was held for 27 years. And this was all the room that there was, as much as I can stretch my arms out. And then while I was there, also in South Africa, I saw the church where Desmond Tutu had been the pastor before he got to be the archbishop. And that was really quite something too. It was a very beautiful place, South Africa. Other questions?
Thank you, Kathryn, for sharing. If you could talk to one African American in history, who would it be and why? And then with that, there's a question that if you were any person who changed America, who would you be?
Well, needless to say, I would love to talk to Harriet Tubman. That would be my first one right off the list. But if I couldn't talk to Harriet Tubman, then another person that I would like to talk to would be Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells had a connection to Illinois, even because her offices were in Chicago for a while. But she was born in the South, but she was in Chicago for a nice period of time. And she was a remarkable woman. And what was the other part of that question, please? If you could be any person who changed America. Any person who changed America, who would I be? I think one woman who greatly changed America was Mamie Till Mobley, the mother of Emmett Till. I think that she was a very brave woman. And what she did after the murder of her son Emmett at the glorious age of 14 in 1955, I think she kind of got us on the path for civil rights and for movement like that. So I think that's who I would say greatly changed the way things are in our country.
Kathryn, thank you. Just two more questions that we have. And then students, I do promise we will answer all the other ones and send those directly to your teachers to respond to you. So one question is, what was the first book that you read that was about an African-American who changed history?
Don't laugh, but I remember going to the public library and checking out a book. It was blue and it had an orange painter's palette on the front, and it was about Harriet Tubman. So I have loved, admired, learned about Harriet Tubman ever since I was probably in about the 5th grade. So, and at home I have several books about Harriet Tubman. And interestingly enough, I have met 2 authors who have written books about Harriet Tubman. And I met them when I was working at the Presidential Library, when they came to do research about President Lincoln. So.
Thank you, Kathryn. And our last question is, how long have you been a librarian? And why did you choose that profession?
Let's see, I became a librarian. I graduated from the University of Illinois in 1971, I think. Yes, and so I've been a librarian since. I got my first professional job at the public library here in Springfield at Lincoln Library in 1972. And what made me want to become a librarian? Actually, when I was in college at Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, I worked in the library. So, and I enjoyed working in the library so much that when I decided to go to graduate school, I decided, well, actually, my friend said, Kathryn, it seems like you like libraries. Why don't you get a degree in library science? And my friend lived in Champaign, which is where the University of Illinois Library School was. So that's where I went to school. And that's where I got my degree. And it has been a wonderful experience for me. I retired, it's been 7 years ago now, because I retired in 2015. But librarianship and books are still in my blood. I truly did enjoy being a librarian. I've had wonderful experiences. I've had the opportunity to be involved in building 3 libraries in my career. And that's something that doesn't happen a lot. I have experience in moving a library. I've moved 2 libraries. And the hardest thing about moving a library is, guess what? Keeping the books in order. But there are these, that be accomplished, and it was. And our move to the libraries, the 2 that I was involved with, were both successful. So, other questions, or was that it?
That was it today. And Kathryn, did you have any last words for students before we close out our wonderful time with them today?
I'd just like to say to all the students that reading is fundamental. Reading can take you to places that you would never, perhaps ever, be able to go. So I encourage you to hone up on your reading skills, go to the library, have books in your house, ask your parents to read to you, or you read to them, or read to your younger brothers and sisters, because reading is fun. Reading is fundamental. It is the underpinning of most every other subject in your class, because you have to read, because you have those word problems in arithmetic. You have to be able to read to learn how to do the problems. It's in science. Reading is everywhere. I remember when my own daughter was learning how to read. She had books called Sam books, and she said to me one day, "You know what, Mom? If I can read these Sam books, then I can read everything in the world." Well, she's not going to read everything in the world, but she would read the billboards. I mean, she'd just talk all the time. When she first learned how to read, she'd see a billboard on the highway, she'd read stop sign, read the yield sign, just read, because reading is good. And I encourage all of you to read and to become your best self. So thank you for inviting me today.
Thank you, Kathryn. We truly appreciate the time you spent with us today.